welcome to the WARC Podcast. I'm Anna Hamill, Senior Editor at WARC. It's day 3 of Cannes Lions. Whether you're wandering the Croisette or catching up from home, we're bringing you all of the highlights and the headlines you'll need to know all week long. It's almost like being here, minus the sunburn, of course. If you're new here, be sure to tap follow to get our daily episodes from Cannes Lions as soon as they drop. Today on the pod, we're talking about new research from System 1, proving that consistency makes media work twice as hard. We're talking about what marketers can learn about creativity from some of the world's biggest artists, including Idris Elba, Metallica, and Dolly Parton. And finally, we're talking about how you can use creators and social effectively to build brand predisposition, not just engagement. But before we meet our first guest, let's get to the headlines. Some really big Lions categories were awarded last night, including entertainment, design, and craft, so we're going to dive right in. In the entertainment Lions, the Grand Prix went to Night Fishing for Hyundai Motor Company by Innocean Seoul. This is South Korea's first ever entertainment Lions, so congratulations to them. In the entertainment Lions for gaming, Mercado Livre took out the Grand Prix with Call of Discounts by Gut Sao Paulo in Brazil. And in the entertainment Lions for music, the Grand Prix went to Tracking Bad Bunny by DDB Latina in Puerto Rico. And finally, in the entertainment Lions for sports, Clash of Clans took the Grand Prix with their campaign Haaland Payback Time by David New York. Onto the design Lions, the Grand Prix went to Caption with Intention for closed captioning by FCB Chicago, one of 2 Grand Prix won last night by this incredible campaign. It also won the Grand Prix for digital craft. Congratulations. And another big congratulations to Spain, Saudi Arabia, and Kazakhstan, which received their first awards in the Digital Craft Lions. On to film craft. The Grand Prix was awarded to Telstra, Better on a Better Network, for Telstra by Bear Meets Eagle on Fire in Sydney. This is Australia's first Grand Prix in this category. In industry craft, the Grand Prix went to Nigrum Corpus for Idomed by Artplan in Sao Paulo. Another big night for the Brazilian contingent here in Cannes Lions. More Lions will be awarded this evening. We will bring you updates on the Grand Prix winning work in tomorrow's podcast. In the meantime, I'm joined by Sam Pena-Taylor, WARC's Deputy Editor, to discuss what's been happening along the Croisette. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Anna.
How's things been going?
It's been good. It's been a hell of a year. It always is. But the big change this year from last and from other years is creators. Creators are here. Creators are being talked about. Creators aren't just a nice to have. They are now a fundamental bit of
they're a huge
brands.
part of the festival. There's just creator activations everywhere, and there's a creator track at the festival this year as well. So we're getting a lot more specialized content and insights into how to work with them more effectively.
Yes, and one of the ways that's manifesting is YouTube's huge presence here. I mean, there's always a Google Beach. There's always a YouTube presence at that Google Beach, but there's almost a similarly large YouTube.
It feels as though Google was secondary to YouTube.
In a way, yeah. This is the creative side of it, and the user-generated or perhaps non-legacy media organization generated content is front and center. That was very clear in this morning's session with CEO Neil Mohan, who was joined on the stage by Chicken Shop Date legend Amelia de Moldenberg and Alex Cooper of Call Her Daddy.
Who has her media empire of her own, just again underlining that how creators are spinning out across. And YouTube is 20 years old this year, and it's just incredible to see the evolution even in the last 2 years of that platform. Viewers now watch over 1 billion hours of YouTube every day, and that's just on their TV. And one of the other stats that he shared was that more than half of the top 100 most watched YouTube channels in the world, TV is their preferred screen. So what we're now starting to see is that YouTube in particular is starting to really chew into the amount of time that viewers are spending watching their TV. And I think that's really interesting within the context of kind of new media versus traditional media.
Yeah. In a way, smart marketers have known this for so long that ultimately, if you think like a consumer, like a normal person, the distinction between long-form content that is served to you in a linear TV fashion and long-form content that you watch on YouTube and enjoy, they're the same thing. They are just entertainment. And now, increasingly, the way that brands can insert themselves in that moment is also becoming more similar.
Those viewers really want kind of more unscripted, more content that kind of breaks the rules of their traditional things. Things that are popular on YouTube may not ever have had a chance to be commissioned by a traditional TV channel. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about how YouTube is evolving and how consumer viewing habits are evolving. One of the examples that Mohan brought up was Sidemen. The football creators, you may know them. If you don't know them, your kids definitely know who they are. They've created their own merchandise lines. They've created a physical store. They've established fast food brand. This is all just out of their own creator brand on YouTube. It's really incredible where this is going.
Yeah. I mean, even walking to the Palais today, YouTube's enormous activation on the screen up top shows others, huge media properties now like Hot Ones. I mean, Hot Ones started
we love
as
Hot Ones.
It started as a really homemade thing, and this has exploded now into the biggest celebrities on the planet go there first.
Do you think we could do a marketing effectiveness gurus Hot Ones episode on the WARC podcast?
I think we need to. I think we need to put the best through their paces.
Yes. Well, that might be a great place to leave it then before we come up with even more crazy ideas. So, Sam, thank you for joining us on the WARC podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And good luck for the rest of the festival covering the news.
I'll need it.
Despite all of its research, resources, technology, and talent, why is the ad industry constantly outplayed and out-innovated by creative artists with zero marketing knowledge, training, or experience? It's a good question to ask. Today on WARC's Creative Impact stage at Cannes Lions, Rob Campbell and Paula Bloodworth deconstructed the creative mindset of artists including Dolly Parton, Idris Elba, and Metallica. What are these iconic names doing to build their brands that advertisers aren't? And what can advertisers learn from them? Together, Rob and Paula unearth the unique perspectives that allow artists to fulfill their creative and commercial ambitions in ways that the advertising industry rarely does, dropping some essential rule-breaking advice along the way. Paula and Rob join me now. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
How do artists use their creative expression to be more innovative than the ad industry? Rob, do you want to kick us off?
I think they are compelled to do the things that they're interested in and are important to them, but they have a real awareness of what's going on, and they want their expression to be felt, seen, and heard in a way that represents their vision for it. So when they feel that's challenged, they basically look for ways to counter it rather than just conform to a system that's always been done. Because what a lot of people fail to understand is they are a business, but they don't necessarily talk about it in that way. But every decision they make is fighting for their creative future. And their commercial value comes as a byproduct of that rather than making decisions purely because of that.
Paula, what's your view?
Yeah, I think working with a few artists in my time, they have this they really back themselves when it comes to their ideas. Like they trust their instincts and they back the ideas, and they kind of go full steam ahead, and they don't wait around. So they're not doing marketing plans 12 months in advance or anything. They're reading what's going on in the world, reacting to it and going, I want to do that and I'm going to go after it. I think so, looking at the artists and the people kind of coming after them, they also have to trust their instincts, because so many people are trying to kind of use them or take them to somewhere they don't want to go. So they really have to rely on themselves. So I think they've learned over time that the person to listen to most is themselves and what they value and who they are and where they want to go. And it ignites and it creates an energy in the room where the ideas just keep coming, and it's an exciting thing to be around.
Between the two of you, you've worked with a bunch of amazing artists. Which artists do you think are really bringing those principles you spoke about to life?
All of them.
Yeah. So many.
I think the thing that Paula and I have both found in our conversations is as Paula mentioned, there's an instinctual element to it. They don't sit with a process. But we're not against, please don't think we were against process. But what we've found is the artist's way of thinking is just integral to their expression. And so their relationship with failure is like they don't see it as the enemy, because they've seen it as part of their creative process from trying to write a song in their bedroom, for example. So I think all of them, they might have different ways of how they're expressed. A band like Metallica have a very different way of how they have built their career, compared to someone like Miley, but the principles are very similar. But yeah, it's definitely not a rule book, but it is something that there's got commonality. And I think Paula and I, both of us, have found with the people that we've been lucky enough to work with and for, that it's just, their prolificness that Paula's just mentioned is just a byproduct of them going, well, why would I wait? And we spend so much time playing not to lose, and they spend so much time playing to express.
I really like what you said about that, because there is definitely a theme across Cannes this week that, perhaps the advertising industry has become too risk averse when it comes to creativity. Why don't those artists allow the fear of failure to impact their creative aspirations or curiosity? Do they just take it as a learning experience? What can our industry take from that?
Yeah, they have this unique ability to just keep going, and they don't look back. I think they've learned, they have failed in their time. They have experienced all those things, but I think the thing they've probably learned, and at least my experience with Idris, is you just keep going on to the next thing. And someone who close to Idris, I was a bit worried at one point, like, should we be putting him in these situations? And someone very close to him said, look, he's like a cat, he always lands on his feet. And I think that's true of so many of these artists, because they know if you keep the conversation moving forward and you don't look back, and that's not to say you don't learn from it and you don't change and evolve and become better, but if you keep moving forward, that's what people respect, and that's what they kind of gravitate to, versus this risk-averse nature that I think we're all succumbing to. And I don't think they look at it like that. In fact, I think they like to break rules a little bit. If you were to tell them, you can't do this because the media says X, Y, and Z, I think their faces go blank a little bit. That doesn't mean they don't respect it and listen to it, but they like to go for the thing that excites them. They follow where the idea takes them.
Totally. And Idris Elba, for example, he's probably more of a multi-hyphenate creative, right? Like, he's an actor, he's a DJ, he's a musician, he's doing all of these different things.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily see that in the advertising industry as much, where it's much more siloed in terms of, this is your specialty, this is your specialty, this is your specialty. Should we be taking more inspiration around trying different types of creativity and seeing where it leads?
I think we've got to be careful saying this is your specialty, because I think one of the problems is we have outsourced responsibility to very smart people whose business model is, this is wrong, do this to be right.
Right.
And fundamentally, they want to put you in a corner. One of the things with all the artists that we talked about in our talk today is that they don't fear being wrong. They fear not doing the stuff that feels right. And they want the right to be able to make their own mistakes, because as long as it's right for them at that moment, that's right. Now, I appreciate there's different commercial aspects, but the outsourcing of creative responsibility to people who've never made creative means that it's a theoretical exercise. I'm not saying that there's not value, but we've just gone too far. And the analogy I used on stage is, it's just like, because music has a numerical value to it, it's like asking a maths teacher to write a pop song. It's like they might be able to have a lot of really valuable insight, but they can't write it because there's a different skill set. And I think we've basically forgotten what we're great at. And there's a space for it to work in unison, but it's almost become a dogma. It's either this or that. And that I think is the problem, because artists don't have that mentality. They go, what feels great, let's go with that. And they back themselves to Paula's point, versus just following a system which says this is the way to work, which ultimately is an insurance policy versus a liberation opportunity, and the artist into liberation.
Right. It's a really interesting point of view. John Hegarty said in his keynote a couple of days ago that in the advertising industry as it is, creativity is really the only thing left to compete on. What's your view on that, Rob? Well,
I think it's the only thing that can transcend distribution, money, heritage. Like, creativity is an incredible power. It can be misused, of course it can, but I think it's being misrespected at the moment. Again, because everyone's looking for dead certs. And again, I have no problem. I understand that. Our job is to help our clients be more successful than they thought they could be, 100%. But I think somewhere along the line, we are mistaking insurance policies, which are value, for growth. And there is a role for that, but there is a misdirect. So creativity has the power to transcend all possible rules. And it's maybe one of the only forces left that can do that, regardless of whoever you are and whatever your position, if it's done properly.
Yeah, I think artists hate being boxed in and reduced to something. And particularly the artists I've worked with is creativity is everything. It's the lifeblood of everything. Like they cherish it and hold on to it and value it. And that is the thing, you know. And I think maybe our industry is getting reduced and getting boxed in and letting, you know, so many people come in and take that piece of the pie who don't respect the creativity, and they're devaluing it. And suddenly, you know, we're reduced to being the creative rapper. Yeah. And that's really insulting because, you know, Rob and I are proud of being part of this industry, and us at our best can, you know, move cities and change behavior. And, you know, that at our best in valuing creativity and putting it on a pedestal like that is what we need to kind of raise up and fight for it like the artists do.
Yeah, it's not a rapper, it's the fucking present, as we often say. And when I started with some, I was told, your job is to protect our truth. That is it. And that truth of creativity, to put it, it's constantly evolving and changing. And they let it take them somewhere. And the moment you try and box it in or say repeat, like best practice. And best practice is great, except it's past practice. And as an industry, we love a best practice thing. And again, we're not about ripping it down. What we've learned from artists, though, is that their whole aspect is about constantly exploring and evolving and finding the thing that matters to them. And then they do it to its full intent.
What needs to change in the advertising industry to really embrace this kind of thinking that you're talking about, this unbridled creativity? Paula, I can see that you're wincing there, but I'm interested in your thoughts about like what really needs to change in agency culture for this to work. Do you think? You mentioned that creativity is starting to feel devalued. Do we as an industry need to think about how we sell creativity better? Is that as easy as it is question, or is it everyone's too risk averse? What's your view?
I'm glad you asked Paula first.
It's a tricky question.
I'm coming to you next, though.
Damn it. Okay.
I mean, look, I think it takes all of us. I think maybe the sale is where the problem is, because we've added all this complexity and processes and systems, and we're selling that rather than creativity. We're selling the wrong thing. And we're making more money off those systems rather than the actual idea. And maybe we don't know how to charge for it. I think that's one thing. I think we have maybe CMOs who want to be CEOs, who are, you know, more concerned with efficiencies and, you know, looking at the numbers and the iterative gains versus going, how can I take a leap? I think it's probably on every single one of us really to try and find a way to, value the ideas again and show up like we have in the past, and we continue to. There's so many great ideas here. But we need to start valuing that versus trying to make money off everything around it that's just adding scar tissue and texture we don't need.
Go on, Rob.
I mean, Paula's given a fucking great answer as usual. Damn her.
It's why we invited her on the pod.
Why do you think I asked her to do the talk with me? Are you crazy? I think it's, if I want to get to really simplistic things, I think we have too many layers, and every layer basically dilutes the potency of something because they're managing up. I think there's too much authority and not enough responsibility in understanding we all have a role in making this work happen rather than just outsourcing that. And I think that there's too many people who are interested in stuff rather than committed to stuff. And if you take those three things, you end up in work which is about appeasing rather than changing. Like I talk a lot, and what I've felt a lot is that artists they want to change something, even if it's how you feel, but there's a fundamental aspect. The moment you have loads of layers, people are only interested in stuff and that they just want the authority, no responsibility. We've all messed up. Add to that a devaluing of the economic aspect. And fundamentally, as a business, we're putting more money in the process than in the output. It can change. And again, there's a lot of really good people out there, but I do get kind of frustrated when all I'm hearing are, here's another marketing system that will guarantee success from the people that created a system that's also contributed to this. It's not entirely their fault because there's a lot of brilliance in that. But it's just like, let's actually have a fucking honest conversation. And what do we want to change? And who's going to be responsible for that? And I think all of those things, and the ad industry is absolutely part of that problem. But we can change it, but we just got to want it rather than just keep complaining about it.
The other thing you said too is feeling. And that's another way the artists really move forward is like they care and they listen to their emotions, like they show vulnerability. And I think people gravitate to that. That's why people, lean in and go, I want to hear more from this person, what they have to say. And we talk about this all the time, about emotion is the way we get some of our best work. And it feels like we're stripping that out a little bit and selling the business rather than making people feel something.
David Richards, he's passed away now. He's a music producer, and he had this great line where he talks exactly what Paul is talking about, lyrical content and how it connects to it. And they're open with their traumas and everything. And he says that's why artists have fans, but companies have consumers. I think that pretty much covers it quite nicely.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic place to leave it. Thank you for coming on the pod with me, and we're putting the world to rights.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Love
for
it.
having us.
Thank you.
Cannes Lions will leave you with unmatched learnings, experiences and connections, and a notebook full of brilliant ideas and inspiration. But with a program packed with cutting-edge talks, you can't be everywhere at once. Lions Advisory's Cannes Lions Deconstructed is the solution. Our team brings your business curated access to the thinking behind the world's best work, transforming those had-to-be-there moments into business results through a live session. Visit www.lions.co/advisory to find out what we offer.
Top planners, creatives, and marketers have always known that consistency is how brands grow. Now, thanks to some new research from System 1, there's a way to prove that consistency makes media work twice as hard. System 1 has leveled up its consistency playbook for marketers by analysing more than 150 US and UK brands over 5 years, overlaid with the IPA databank and the FE case library. On the Cannes stage earlier, Andrew Tindall, SVP of Global Partnerships at System 1, shared 13 ways to stay consistent and dramatically grow business impact with advertising across years, campaigns, and channels. Andrew joins us now to share some of those insights, including how CMO tenure impacts effectiveness and how to keep advertising consistent but fresh. Andrew, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Can you give me a whistle-stop tour of the research? What are the key data points that marketers need to know?
Sure. So, look, compound creativity has been wildly successful. Everyone's loving it. So, we wanted to bring it to Cannes and update it in a few ways. So we brought more of the IPA data into this again, looking at their awards, because their awards run every 2 years.
Yeah.
So we brought in the latest batch of brands there and coded all those up for consistency. And we wanted to bring in Americans to the party. Americans are often left outside in the cold. So we have been working with FE at the moment to build an IPA-like data bank, which Mark Ritson's actually doing some a talk at Cannes for us, looking at the main findings from that. It's called the Creative Dividend, which is kind of separate research. But we've been able to match these brands to the FE case library as well, and look at how consistency works in the US as well. And well, first of all, the good news is it works perfectly like we expected with the FE data looking at US brands. I think the top lines there are, you see these business results get exponentially bigger the more consistent a brand is. We actually see the most consistent brands having quadruple the reported ROI in the FE case library. Again, so just more proof that consistency is how brands grow, really.
As part of this research, how are you defining consistency?
Well, that's a great question. So marketers all know that consistency is a key marketing principle. But it means different things to different people. You'll hear lots of different ways of referring to it. So after researching this for a couple of years now, we split it into 3 different ways a brand can be consistent. There are your creative foundations. So that's sticking with the same idea, campaign, and ideally creative team for a long time. We find there's some new findings in this research on brands that have consistent creative foundations are 6 times more likely to report profit gains in the IPA data bank. So it's really important. A good example of this I like to use is Bailey's. Bailey's realized that adults weren't treating themselves anymore, so repositioned from a cream liqueur to an adult treat. They worked with Mother for 5 years. and they consistently brought the Don't Mind If I Baileys campaign to life for 5 years. They grew revenue by 40% over that period.
That's incredible.
Which, for Baileys, that's probably that value is probably more than some countries' GDP. And they won an IPA award in 2022. So it's a really strong example of that. And in this research, we look at the different ways that these three types of consistency work. So the creative foundations, it works by building mental availability. So if you choose the one or two associations your brand is going to try and own in someone's mind to grow salience, and then you hammer those again and again and again, that is literally how a brand grows. So that's one way a brand can be consistent with those foundations. The second way is what I call a culture of consistency. That is a team working together to stretch ideas across time and space, which sounds very daft, doesn't it? So let me explain it.
It sounds like a science fiction movie.
It does. It's committing to your campaigns for longer, putting them in more places, so across the mix, being consistent across the mix. It's reusing your assets, and it's committing to showmanship, which sounds odd, but if a brand can commit to being consistently entertaining, they are committing to getting more their campaigns seen and remembered and more attentive reach. So the second way of being consistent is really committing to getting your ideas seen and putting them to work. And wearing is a key part of that. So using your campaign for longer. We've done this great study in this research looking at the top UK brands and how long they put their ads on TV for. And we've seen that on average, some brands actually only use their TV ads for a few weeks at a time, which is a joke. Where some brands use their TV ads for years at a time. Yorkshire Tea is a great example. On average, they use their TV ads for about 2 years at a time, which is brilliant. And we see this great relationship between wearing and ad distinctiveness. The longer a brand keeps their ad on air for, in media for, we see this gain in ad distinctiveness year on year, because that's how advertising works. It's building and reinforcing these memory structures.
That kind of goes against the idea of wear out as well, doesn't it? Because I think a lot of marketers think, consumers are getting bored of these ads, but it sounds as though your research is saying, actually, if you stay consistent with these ads, you're building more mental availability, more brand recognizability over time.
Yeah, completely. There's some interesting stuff like looking at, not wear in, wear out, but creative fatigue in digital platforms. So, I don't want to have my head in the sand and be completely ignorant of that. And we've done a lot of research with TikTok actually looking at this. And, creative fatigue is a thing. The more you hit someone with a message, you see stuff like average view time going down and stuff like this. But what we found with TikTok, and it's research we've released this week as well, I've been a very busy boy.
You have.
Is the more entertaining and emotional an ad is, one, frequency compounds that as well. So if you have a shit ad, hitting it over the head 10 times with someone, it's not going to get very far. But if you've got a beautiful, entertaining, emotional, distinctive ad, frequency actually compounds it, and you get this beautiful dividend between you and a bad ad. So I'm pretty convinced that wear in, wear out, marketers have it wrong. We need to be using our ads for longer.
How can brands find a balance between the consistency that you mentioned and also keeping things fresh, which really, especially in social media, the algorithm demands newness? Yeah.
So we breezed over the third way of being consistent. Let me just cover that very quickly, which is about looking and feeling the same. So distinctive assets, this kind of stuff. Which, brings us on to that question very nicely. We're speaking at Cannes and with Les Bonet and Sarah Carter, who have also done this podcast.
Yes, friends of the pod.
Yes. Sarah is going to be talking about The Simpsons and how Simpsons have done 30 seasons and kept this campaign, let's call it, alive and interesting for decades. It's very similar with consistency. It's about nailing these three ways of being consistent as well as you can do. It's also not about being perfectly consistent. It's about being relatively more consistent than your competitor. that's how you see compounding effects. Once you've got those foundations set up, it's about having a creative team that can keep things interesting, entertaining, and right-brained within that.
That sounds really interesting. I wish we had more time to talk about it, but that is all the time that we have to chat with you today. Thank you so much for joining us on the WARC Podcast again.
Anytime. Thank you.
Creators are a huge topic across the festival this week. How to work with them, how to co-create with them, and how to measure effectiveness. In the connected age, ideas need to work like Velcro, connecting with culture across a fragmented media landscape fueled by creators. Ideas that flow create more brand growth, but implementing this successfully is often easier said than done. Joining us fresh off the Cannes Lions stage to discuss this in more depth are Natasha Maharaj, Global International Brands Director at Heineken, and Vera Sidlova, Global Creative Thought Leadership Director at Kantar. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vera, what are the 5 catalysts to making high-performing, connected brand-building ideas?
So we've covered 5 different things today. They're quite big, each on their own, could probably make a separate Cannes talk. But we do start from thinking about brands shifting to long-term creative platforms, not just thinking about individual campaign ideas. Then we think about how you do that through culture, how you connect with culture. And to do that effectively, we are advocating for people changing how they co-create with creators to really be effective through that cultural interaction. And then we focus on how you actually connect to context in a creator economy, because that's got a very different mindset from what many marketers are used to doing in, let's say, paid channels. And then the big, really effectiveness unlock is how well you're able to connect what you're doing with creators with what you're doing in your paid brand channel work. And if that's actually becoming better than the sum of its parts, like if what you're doing is creating synergy effects from your creator work with your, let's say, out of home or paid social.
Really? How does that work? Can you explain that in a little more depth?
Yeah, so synergy effects is a very fancy word. I mean, marketers love many of them, but it's a very simple concept. It's the idea that you get additional impact by someone seeing your content in more than one channel. In the olden days, before 2014, if you looked at a campaign, about 1/5 of its effectiveness came from this added bonus of synergy effects. Nowadays, that's almost half. 45% of campaign effectiveness comes from how well you're able to connect the dots across the different channels and places where you're showing up. So right now, being a connected creative brand is not optional. Like, you're not going to be massively effective if your strategy doesn't plan for connectivity. And creators is one of those challenging aspects, I think, for a lot of marketers to think about. How do I balance that? How do I balance their individuality, their relationship with their community, with what I stand for? And that's what our talk focused on today.
Really interesting. Natasha, how can you use creators and social effectively to build brand predisposition, not just engagement? What have your experiences been at Heineken?
So as Vera's mentioned, in terms of these communities, they're super important. And I guess this position of brand, the community, and what you're trying to achieve is super important, because this is the sweet spot. So I'll use the example of Desperados. It's the beer with the Latin vibe. The communities we're trying to reach are communities that are letting loose, that are having fun, and also are putting out vibe in their own way, in a creative way. And so connecting to the Latin vibe plus these communities that want to create has been massively effective. An example of the campaign is we've taken Desperados, a beer with infused spirits, into nails, Latin vibe nails, which you never think about in reality. And it's been super effective because this energy of Latin energy is transcending into new channels and bringing the Latin vibe and new experiences that consumers wouldn't typically get. So that's how we're fusing almost the brand with these connected, created communities into very different formats and channels to bring the brand proposition to life.
Have you been able to draw a direct line between these types of activities and the effectiveness side of it? Are you seeing real brand growth as part of your creator strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things we've just been awarded is the most effective and creative brand by Kantar, as voted by 5,000 consumers. So consumers are telling it back to us. But in terms of quantitative metrics, we've seen our brand power increase in the last, let's say, 6 to 8 months. And what we know, and this is something that Kantar has helped us with, is branded content, but creator content co-created is 4 times more engaging. But more than that, when we track the communities that we're in, the engagement levels, the reach, far higher. So the big point is, how do you get into culture where you earn it as a brand versus you force-fitting yourself into the conversations? And we see the direct correlation with brand power, but also the engagement metrics at a digital level for the brand.
I love that idea, what you mentioned, of creating communities.
Yeah.
And that kind of taps into that word of mouth, emotional language that we know really drives effective brand growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's such a big shift. I've been a marketeer for 20 years now. And when I started at Unilever many years ago, we were going one to many, big reach channels and on TV, and how do you make sure it's effective? And now we're moving many to many. And what that means is our content, our creativity needs to meet in different channels, in different contexts, but also it needs to really engage, because the days of big, mass media channels are over, and it's really about how you can connect to your communities and your creators in a very engaging way.
I love that. Vera, going back to you, what are the executional elements that brands need to flex, and also which ones do they need to keep consistent across all of these channels Natasha mentioned? You're almost taking a lots of little approach. We had Grace Kite on the podcast yesterday talking about this with McDonald's in more depth. What's your perspective on that?
So if we think about, I know it's a bit of a simplification, but if you think about marketers managing brand-led channels that they have more ownership of and creator content, there are certain connectivity drivers within each of those. So traditionally in the kind of one-to-many age, connectivity was about, maybe having the same message, having a very tight creative idea that you then executed in your meta execution, in your, TikTok, YouTube, out of home. And we find that marketers are getting a lot better at integrating within brand-led channels. And the executional elements that drive that are very much the same. It's still the logo, it's still the message. Like what worked 7 years ago within that is still working now. The new frontier is the connectivity to creator content, because currently, according to our database, only 27% of creator content creates a strong association with the brand. And yet the content that does has much higher potential to impact on brand equity. So that is the kind of effectiveness, make it or break it moment for creators. And what we find drives connectivity between the creator content and the brand-led content, kind of the heart of that synergy multiplier, is how well the creative idea connects to what your brand wants to stand for, to your meaningfully different edge. Because in creator content, you're not going to have your jingle, every time. You're not going to have logo at second 3. You're not going to be that prescriptive, back to that idea of co-creation. So what is the glue? The most branded influencer content that we found was it just breathed the brand without being prescriptive and without showing the matching luggage, but it was unmistakably the brand that it was for, because of the core strong creative platform that brought the two together. And I think Desperados have done a fabulous job on this campaign, creating exactly that connectivity.
I love that. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Natasha, Vera, for joining us on the WARC Podcast today.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the festival. It's time to wrap up today's episode, but we'll be back tomorrow with more highlights from across the festival. Thank you to all of our incredible guests for joining us today. Be sure to tap follow if you haven't already to get these episodes as soon as they go live. Thanks for listening, and see you tomorrow.